Welcome back to Moonlit Journal. Today I wanted to talk about how my 2025 journals and planners are going. And to be honest, it has not been going well. And I'm so disappointed to say that. Truthfully, I was kind of nervous to film this video because it's a little bit embarrassing to admit that, only 3 weeks into January, I've realized that this isn't working for me. And that sucks. I did not expect that. It's not what I had hoped for, obviously. And truthfully, I felt this way my first week into this year. Like 1 week in, I was already not enjoying my new system. And I missed my cousin. I missed the book that I was previously in 2024. And that was not a great sign. I felt like maybe if I just pushed through and gave it some more time, because really a lot of these books were a new way of journaling for me. I felt like maybe there was just going to be an adjustment period and I just had to get used to them and accustomed to new books. So I gave it some more time. I gave it 2 more weeks. We're now 3 weeks into January. I'm filming this on the 21st. But the more time I spent in these books, the more certain I was that this system is not working for me. And I wanted to make a video about it because, one, it really helps me to talk to you all. And I have found a lot of comfort in having these types of conversations with our little community here. But 2, because I think it might help anyone else who is also experiencing this. And something that I've noticed so far in 2025 is there's actually a lot of videos of people saying that their 2025 systems aren't working for them. And I was surprised to see that. I think in 2024, I didn't really see many videos like that. And maybe that was just my algorithm, I don't know. But this year, there seems to be a lot more people who are feeling this way, who are not feeling comfortable in their new books, who are reconsidering their systems so early into the new year. And it just seems to be more common this year for whatever reason. I have no idea why, really, but with any challenges in life, it is helpful to talk about it and helpful to see other people's experiences with it. So I wanted to add to that conversation because truly I am struggling with these books. And at first I did feel really embarrassed and disappointed about that. Not only because it feels wasteful, right? But I've also shared these books in multiple videos at this point. I was really excited about them. I was excited for the change. And most importantly, I put a lot of thought into the notebooks that I chose. There were very specific reasons as to why I bought each of these books and why I chose to use them. And so for these things to look so great on paper, but not actually work out in practice, it also just makes you second guess yourself and doubt your own judgment. And so that's also really disappointing and frustrating. So what I've since learned from this is that even if something makes sense on paper, it is a completely different story in practice. I tried to create the most practical and efficient and optimized system for myself this year. But what I've realized is that it's far more important how something makes you feel rather than how efficient or functional it is. And that has been the case for most of these books. I think something else that has helped me make peace with the fact that these aren't working for me is that my journals are not just something that I do for fun. It's not just a hobby for me, but more importantly, it is a practice in my life that is very important to my sense of self, my sense of identity, my mental health. It's something that needs to work for me, essentially. Before I had a regular journaling practice, I truly felt so lost in the world, I feel. Like I I really struggled with understanding myself, but once I got into the practice of journaling, that completely changed. My life had so much more meaning. It felt like I felt so much more in tune with myself. I've had so much more self-assurance and confidence in who I am. I was able to give meaning to the small things that I experienced every single day. And as a result, my life felt so much bigger, more important, more valuable, and meaningful. So reminding myself how important this practice is to who I am helped me make peace with the fact that it's okay if I need to change my books, change my system if it's not working for me, because ultimately what's most important is that I feel at home in my books and that they are actually working for me. So all that to say, although it's only a couple weeks into January and I'm already realizing that this is not what I want to use for the rest of the year, and I feel embarrassed and disappointed about that, at the same time, I'm trying to be really understanding about it and realize that that is completely okay, that I shouldn't be hard on myself, and that if you are going through this as well, you shouldn't be hard on yourself. We learn from it and we move forward, and every year we try to improve our systems and improve what's working for us, and that's something to be proud of. And if it doesn't work out, then it's something you learn from. And ultimately, what matters most is that your books are helping you and benefiting you in some way. So yeah, I wanted to start with that. But now I want to go through each of my 2025 books and explain how they went for me and what maybe didn't work for me and what I will be doing instead, because using these books still taught me a lot, and these are all lessons that I'm now going to be implementing back into what I'm using for 2025 moving forward. And as for what I'm going to be using instead of these books, it's actually going to be my 2024 cousin. I'm just moving back into this book because this was actually a spring start. So I still have, quite a few pages left in here. There's a lot of space left, and the monthly pages as well, they go on until, I believe, May. Yeah, so we have months up till May in here. And I also only moved into this book, I believe, in June of 2024. So it's, I really had only spent 6 months in here, and it just felt like I was leaving it too soon. At the start of 2025, I was hesitant to move out of here. I still felt like I had a long ways to go in here, so it felt weird moving into these new books when I had only really gotten 6 months in here. And really, I think the Hobonichi Cousin just feels like home to me. And I'll get into why that is a little bit later, but I really think the best decision for me right now is to just move back in here, especially because it doesn't even require me buying another book. I can just move back into what I already have and continue pouring love into this book that was working pretty well for me. There are a couple reasons why I moved out of here, but after learning from what didn't work well here, I have since implemented a lot of that into my cousin now. And I feel like this is really going to be the best space for me, at least for now, because I have it. And so I might as well continue using it. So going over each of my 2025 books, how they went for me, what didn't work, I wanted to start with my Hobonichi Techo, because this was really supposed to be like my daily journaling main memory keep for the year. It was the book I was most excited about, and ultimately it did not work for me for a couple of reasons. So for one, this was a new type of journaling format for me. I am not someone who's ever done daily journaling. I was pretty new to that practice, and I intentionally wanted to introduce daily journaling into my life because I felt like it would be good for me. I felt like my memory was getting a little worse over the past few years, And so selfishly, I wanted all of my daily memories documented for me to look back on. But I also felt like it would be a great way to introduce more presence and mindfulness into my life, kind of being forced to reflect on each day and think about the moments, big and small from every day that I felt were worth documenting. But what I found is that that's just not the type of journaling that I find beneficial to me. It's not something that really adds a lot of value to my life. The type of journaling that really helps me is when I'm feeling conflicted about something and need to talk through it and articulate my feelings and kind of better understand why I feel a certain way, or when I'm really interested in something and genuinely want to write about it and express why this thing interests me, or if there's any important information relevant to my life that I want to document and reference for later. So memory keeping in general does not really benefit me. And because it's something that I'm not used to doing, it really started to feel like an obligation coming in here every day. It started to feel like a chore having to fill out my daily journal. It was like one more thing on my checklist that I had to complete for the day. And that's never how I want my journals to make me feel. I never want it to feel like a chore or an obligation. So that was a problem for sure. That was the first sign that I felt like this is not sustainable for me. The other thing I will say, these are smaller things, but the paper, the new paper, I really didn't like it in here. I had to change my pen a few days through. So you can see here, I started with my favorite pen, the Pilot Super Petite. But I felt like this looked way too thick in here. And I think it's just because it just writes differently on this paper. There was some feathering. It would spread, the ink would spread a little bit more than I'm used to. And so starting from the 4th onwards, I switched to a different pen that still looks quite thick in here actually. But I really didn't like that. I want to be able to use the pens I'm most comfortable with. And this was just not as nice of a writing experience. The other thing was the size of this book felt too restricting, surprisingly. I guess because I have spent so much time in Hobonichi Cousins, that is the size and the format that I'm most used to. I also just love how when you open it, it just lays fully flat because of the size of the page and the weight. Versus this, sometimes I felt like I had to kind of hold down the page as I'm writing. Yeah, I have kind of grown accustomed to this size and having more blank space to look at. Somehow, opening to a blank page in here, I'm able to visualize a spread so much easier than in here. And each day, you're only given so much space to write that it almost made me feel like I need to really think about what I want to write about here before I start writing, because I only have so much space to articulate what I want to say. And so I really didn't like the concept of just being allotted this amount of space each day versus the way that I use my cousin is so different. I disregard the dates up here and I just write as little or as much as I want. So I was used to that way of writing and I thought I could adapt to this new way and I just couldn't. My brain doesn't work this way at all. And so that's another lesson that I learned, I guess, that as much as I have these hopes and dreams to start a new way of journaling and to start a new practice or even just a new habit in my life, I have to be realistic about what does and doesn't work for me. And sometimes we have this fantasy self in our minds of, I want to be someone who daily journals. I want to be someone who can use a Hobonichi Techo. And that's the fantasy that I have for myself, but that's not me. And that's not realistic to my life or to my preferences. And so being honest with yourself, I think, is really important when you're considering changing your system. And it's something that I was not doing. I was not being honest with myself here. And because of that, I really didn't enjoy my time in here. And it's a shame because I was really excited for this, and I feel bad that this book may go to waste now, and that really hurts me. It hurts to think about that. But ultimately, this was not really adding much value to my life. And if anything, I was just feeling stressed out whenever I was in here, which is not good. So this is something that I, for right now, will be removing from my 2025 system. And I'll always have the book with me, I'll keep it. I'm sure through the year I will have bouts of restlessness and will feel the need to planner hop. So this book will be there for me if I ever need it again. But I have just learned that daily journaling is not for me. I do have many times in my life where I do journal every single day, but for it to be a necessity or an obligation completely changes the experience for me. And this just felt too restricting at the end of the day. Okay, next we have my Commonplace book, or what I intended to be my Commonplace. So I definitely enjoyed this more than my experience with the A6, but I still wasn't liking it as much as I did in my cousin. I have quite a few pages filled out in here, and I really enjoy flipping through this. Like I think it looks great. It was fun being in here. But there was something about the size, I think, the dimensions of a traveler's notebook that I just couldn't fully adjust to, I think, for this purpose. I wasn't able to visualize spreads as easily as I can in the cousin. The size felt awkward, and I found that my thoughts wouldn't flow as easily in here. And I think that's because for me, traveler's notebooks feel more conducive to jotting things down quickly, or more like on-the-go type journaling, more casual journaling, even like more artistic or crafty kind of spreads. But how I like to Commonplace is really a more slow, reflective, long form type of journaling. And you can see that in some of my spreads in here, something like this, where I really take up the span of 2 pages and I can add in larger images and just really expand upon my thoughts in a very slow and reflective way. And I just felt like this type of journaling didn't translate as well into this size and format. I felt like I had to be more concise with what I was saying because I didn't want certain entries to span over like multiple flips. It didn't work well for my brain. I just couldn't think in this format as well as I do in the cousin. Yeah, it's just my commonplacing method did not translate as well in here, which is a shame because I love this book. I love having this in my hands. I love the tactile feeling of holding this and flipping through it. I wish this was something that I could continue to use, but ultimately it's not working for me. This is not how I like to commonplace. And again, it was that feeling of being restricted. And so I guess I really took for granted how well the cousin works for me and how well this format and this specific writing experience works. Like everything about it, the way that the pages lay flat here, the way that my hand has a lot of space as I'm writing to rest on the page. It's those small things that make the writing experience all the more pleasurable that we're missing here. The pages don't lay flat in here. My hand would often hang off of the side as I'm writing. It didn't feel as comfortable to write in here. And like I said, I couldn't visualize the spreads as easily. And my commonplace is really where I like to be more creative with my spreads and, introduce visuals aside text and have it be more of a narrative that I'm telling with the visuals. So yeah, I just felt like this wasn't as compatible for that. Of course, I will still have this traveler's notebook in my collection. I adore this notebook, and I am thinking through what purpose this can serve in my life still. It still holds all of my ephemera and sticker collection. So for that, I will still be using this book. And I already have some other ideas for how I can use this insert as well. But more to come on that. I want to think through it some more, and so I'll provide an update on this once I have really solidified how I'm going to be using it. But for right now, I will be moving my Commonplace entries back into my Cousin. Okay, now moving into my work planner, which was housed in this Starbucks Reserve Roastery Traveler's Notebook. Just to recap, I used to do all my work planning in my Cousin, and let me just open to an example week here. I would basically use the weekly spread to have a long to-do list each day of all of my work tasks, and that was it. I just used it as a running to-do list each day. I felt like it was lacking the space I needed to write down additional work-related notes, prepping for meetings, jotting down ideas, brainstorming, documenting information from important meetings. I didn't have the space for that in here because each column is so narrow, and because I would just use it as a to-do list, essentially. The other reason I moved into this is so that I could include a monthly insert and track any deadlines or work-related events in that insert as well. And for a while, this was working really well. I did find the extra space to take notes each day really helpful. And like I said, I do think traveler's notebooks are really good for that style of list making or jotting down bullets of what you need to get done. So I enjoyed using this, but I found that it wasn't as functional as I thought it would be. I really missed being able to see all of my tasks laid out across the week and kind of see the progress I was making day by day, being able to pull tasks from earlier in the week to later on in the week if I didn't finish them. I missed the weekly view, and I have gotten so accustomed to this layout in the Cousin that I think that's how my brain is used to understanding my work tasks now. And so this is an example of how I am now using the Cousin weekly spread as my work planner. And so I've moved back into here now for work planning, and I've incorporated some changes to really help me with what was lacking previously. And so you can see here, I still add all of my to-dos each day for work, and just have that as a running to-do list. But I've also added meeting notes under that each day. So for example, I knew that I was meeting with this person this week, and so I started jotting down some of the topics I wanted to discuss with them in our one-on-one. And as the week went on, I kind of added to that as new things came up. And just adding this into my view has made it so much more functional for me. This was something I wasn't doing previously. I just had my to-do list, and I don't know why it never occurred to me to just add in those items that I felt were missing and just test it out in this format before moving to something completely new to solve for it. I think often we get so set in our ways with how we use a certain planner that we don't think about these small tweaks we can make to make it better. And we would rather completely move to a new system, a new book, a new format to solve for those things when it's often not necessary. And so that's something I've learned, that if I do feel like something is lacking here, to just test adding it into this existing format, and it might actually work just fine. The other thing that I was able to add into this weekly format is notes and brainstorming, and that's what I've covered up here on the side. But basically, previously, the weekend days would always go to waste for me because I never had any to-dos for the weekend, because this space is just dedicated to work for me. And then it occurred to me that this space is already empty. Why don't I just repurpose it as a note-taking space? And so that actually worked for me really well. It was just the perfect amount of space for this week for me to jot down all of the notes I had after every meeting, any ideas that I had that I needed to reference later on. And so this is another case where I didn't realize that what I was missing could fit easily into this layout already. So now moving forward, I am dedicating the weekend to my weekly note-taking, brainstorming space. The other thing I've done is moved my non-work related tasks for the week into this left-hand column here. And that has freed up space in my days of the week to only write down my work-related tasks. And so everything else moves here. This is more like housekeeping, errands, chores, that type of adulting stuff. And that has worked really well for me as well. And then lastly, the other thing that this spread has been able to solve for is my daily memory keeping. So I knew I still wanted to have some level of reflecting on the day, but not in the format of the Hobonichi Techo. I found that my daily to-do list often doesn't take up the full space of a page, and I'm usually left with half of the day's worth of space. And that is the perfect amount of space for me to quickly recap that day. Anything that stood out from that day, anything important I did that I would like to remember. This has worked out really well as my daily memory keep as well. So it's been really cool to see how I've been able to make the smallest of tweaks to this layout and for it to completely transform how I use it and how much it is serving me. It's become so functional for me now. It's exactly what I need. And I love that I'm able to see all of my tasks on a full weekly view. It is a perfect reflection of what I was up to this week in my life. And so this is actually serving as a much better daily journal and memory keep and documentation of my life than the Hobonichi Techo was. And it is serving as my work planner at the same time. So this is kind of a workhorse for me now, and I'm really, really happy with how I'm using the weekly spread. Okay, and the last book that I had in my 2025 system was this Hobonichi Weeks that I was using as my health tracker. And this has been really functional for me. It's been working well overall. I have found it a great way to track my health symptoms in the monthly views. In the weekly views, it also provides a very comprehensive recap of how my health was that week. It's helped me identify any patterns and trends in my health. The notes pages have also been incredibly helpful to take to doctor's appointments. So overall, this has been a very functional book for me. So this is actually one that I will be continuing this year. There are some things that I don't like about it. This is a book that does feel like a chore to me, honestly, to fill out. To have to go in here every single day and make sure that I'm writing a full recap about how I felt that day can feel really tedious because I often feel very similar day to day. I often experience the same symptoms every single day. I'm someone who has pretty frequent migraines, so every day I'm writing that I have a migraine, essentially. And that can get tedious after a while. It can also start to make me feel quite down, seeing it day to day, seeing the same story over and over again. But ultimately, I think this is a case where functionality is more important than how the book makes me feel, because this is really going to help me provide an accurate account of my health to my doctors. And that's what's most important to me. It also really clearly tells me what I should focus on when it comes to my health, what needs most of my attention, what needs to be prioritized over something else. So in that way, I have found it really beneficial to my life, even though I don't always like to document on a daily basis. I know that is what's good for me right now in my life. So I'm going to be sticking with this. And so basically what that means is my 2025 system now just consists of these 2 books. So it went from 4 different notebooks to just 2. And I think that is so much more manageable and realistic to my lifestyle. I am really, really happy to be back in the Cousin, ultimately, even though I felt so many conflicted feelings about having to abandon the system that I gave so much thought to. I do feel like it's the right choice to move back in here, and I've already felt so much better in here. And so for 2025, what I kind of did to still mark the start of a new year is I created this cover page in my daily section, and I love it. I love looking at this page. I think it perfectly encapsulates me at this point in time. It's a good reflection of me right now. I think I've added a little quote here that kind of is how I'd like to approach this year. And yeah, I've been really enjoying being back in here. I've filled out quite a few spreads already. I really missed this layout and this journaling format. I missed having everything in one book, in one place. And I see this as my life book. This is where I feel most me. It feels weird to say that, but I quickly learned that this year, that this is where I feel most myself and where I can most easily articulate myself. And so I will continue to be in here for as long as I can, for as long as this book allows me to. And most likely that would be probably till the middle of the year, at which point I would probably try to get my hands on a July to December avec, maybe, if anyone is reselling those at that point. So we'll see. I ultimately have realized that my journal is a place for me to come when I need it. And that's how I've always worked in my Hobonichi Cousins for the past 2 years. It's been a book where I don't pay any attention to the dates up here. I just write as much or as little as I need when I need it. And it's not something that I need to write in every single day, but it has brought me so much joy, so much value. And I'm trying not to feel guilty about needing to be back in here and abandon my other journals. You know, I can already see how much joy I have felt just being back in here, how much more at home I feel, and this is the most important practice in my life ultimately, so I have to make sure that it is working for me, and this is now working for me really well. And so I just wanted to share that with you all in case any of you are also experiencing something similar where your 2025 system is not working as well as you thought it would. And hopefully, if anything, this makes you feel a little less alone in that. So yeah, I know this was a really long video. If you watched till the end, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being here and just spending time with me and supporting my channel. Like I said in the comments, I would love if you could share how your 2025 notebooks are going, and if you are experiencing something similar, I think it would really help to have that discussion in the comments and for other people to see that, and yeah, for all of us to just feel a little less alone in our experience, I think is what's most important. So I would really appreciate if you could share your experience in the comments. And yeah, I wanted to thank you for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video.